My last video that I put out was talking about how the winning team of the Grand Fest, Team Past, could possibly affect the next Splatoon game, as it has always been like this for Grand Festivals and the final Splatfest of Splatoon games. And you guys loved that video. There were over 200 comments. And as any great YouTuber does, I read your comments. And there was one thing that stood out to me that most of the comments all had in common, and all of them seemed to mention the next Splatoon game being placed during the Great Turf War. So what exactly was the Great Turf War? Well, the Great Turf War started back before Splatoon 1, and this was way back, like whenever Captain Cuttlefish was a young, handsome guy. The war was caused because of the water levels were rising, and thus resulting in less land/turf. And because the Inklings and Octolings didn't have the best friendship, they did have some friendship, but it wasn't like in Splatoon 2 or in Splatoon 3. And because of this, they fought over the land. And this was a problem because obviously it created a huge war. And they could have just shared, but apparently they've never watched a single stupid kids show and don't know what sharing is, so they decided to fight instead. Now, the Octolings were ahead in this war at first, but this was only because, and this is literally from Splatoon 1, this is not me making up anything, it was because the Inklings could not wake up early enough in the morning to defend themselves. Like, how lazy are the Inklings? They are literally me. They are literally super lazy, and I cannot even understand why. But yeah, they were losing because they were sleeping in. So it looked like the Octolings were winning, but this was all changed by young Captain Cuttlefish leading the very first Squidbeak Splatoon, which is not the current one with Callie and Marie, but the very first one, and this was great. It changed the tides of the war, and obviously this was probably the first time the Inklings started getting ahead in this war, and also makes sense why Captain Cuttlefish is such a good leader in all of the Splatoon games. Now, there was one other reason why the Octolings were losing, and that is because, obviously, one of the ways that they were getting ahead is their Octo Weapons, which, kind of a corny name, but yep, that's what they were, Octo Weapons. And the reason, and one of the reasons that they were losing is because somebody unplugged it. Yep, they unplugged the weapons. So, Inklings sleep in, stupid thing to do. Octolings accidentally or purposely unplug something that's helping them win the war. So, yeah, that's something. Now, the original members of the first Squidbeak Splatoon included Judd. Yes, the cat Judd that judges you after a turf war match. Yeah, that Judd, the cat. And it also included Sheldon, the guy that talks about buckets for hours and hours and hours and hours.
One eternity later.
And hours. And there were two others as well, but as far as I know and as far as I researched, I could not find any information on what their names were, so the two unknown others, and obviously the leader of it, which is Captain Cuttlefish. And because of the Squidbeak Splatoon and the Octolings unplugging their most valuable weapon, the Inklings ended up winning the war and forcing the Octolings underground, and obviously we know what happens after that. That's Splatoon 1. But now that I have you caught up on your Splatoon history, let's jump into the comments and the theories. Now, the comments section seemed to be split into two different types. The people that said we'd go back in time to stop some sort of villain from changing things during the Great Turf War, maybe an Octoling villain, or the half of people that said just the game being placed in that timeline, not going back in time, but just being placed in that time, and the game is just about that time, not future people traveling back in time. And I'm going to talk about both of these people's theories. Now, I want to start off with the time travel one because I don't think it's going to happen personally. I think that there's no way we would take characters we already know are not going to be, their story's not going to be continued. Nintendo's already said this officially. And so we would have to pick a character we don't know, which would just be a random character, and no one would understand why his random character is traveling back in time. And then also, it doesn't seem like time travel would be the best thing to start a game off with, and it would very much confuse players and kind of just really confuse the entire story mode. So I feel like this wouldn't happen, and I'm just going to quickly write this theory off as I don't think it's going to happen. Now, on the other hand, the other theory is definitely plausible, and you might say, well, a prequel is going to consider as a game tied to the other ones, so it's kind of against what Nintendo's doing. Nintendo said they're going to be abandoning the story of the current characters and starting with a new story, but it doesn't necessarily have to be connected to the other characters in any large way. Obviously, the Sunken Sea Scrolls, which are just little collectibles that share a bit of the story, could reference a lot of stuff from other games or, reference Captain Cuttlefish or something like that, but they don't necessarily have to connect it. It could be a totally independent story where you play as a brand new character, Inkling or Octoling, and you just go and play in this War for the Story mode, and they didn't have to fully connect it. But the one greatest problem about this, and what makes me think we will never get a game based in the Great Turf War, is the fact that Turf War, the actual game mode in Splatoon, was not created until after the Great Turf War, which was what inspired it. The Great Turf War inspired the game Turf War, so it would actually be impossible to have the multiplayer mode called Turf War during the Great Turf War. So it basically would be impossible unless the end of the story mode will unlock Turf War, but that would be locking Turf War to be only accessible after playing the story mode, and if you didn't play the story mode and it was unlocked before that, then it would just be weird and no one would understand it. Also, the fact that Inklings and Octolings are at war and would not both be playable characters, either Octolings or Inklings by themselves would be the only playable characters, and you wouldn't be able to play as a team of Octolings and Inklings because they're at war. It wouldn't make sense. So I'm not sure about this theory of the Great Turf War. Perhaps a spin-off game about this that is only a story game and obviously doesn't have Turf War. It only is a story about the Great Turf War could happen. But honestly, when it comes to Splatoon 4, I don't think that we're going to go back in time or visit anything revolving around something we already know about. I think everything will be brand new, and I think that they are not going to go back in time or place a game that is in the future or back in time. I think we'll just be in a totally new universe of Splatoon with totally new history and everything. Let me know what you think down in the comments though. I'm Nblade, and thank you for watching.